On August 23rd of 2017, a tropical depression in the lower Gulf of Mexico reorganized and strengthened into a tropical storm. Within 3 days, this weather disturbance would grow into the first Category 4 hurricane to hit the Texas coast in 12 years. Its worst blows were dealt to the coastal community of Rockport, Texas, 31 miles northeast of Corpus Christi. After the storm had passed, Oak Creek decided to research how its homes had fared. Never before had the construction and installation standards of our homes been tested to the degree they were by Harvey's 130-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and not to mention the multiple tornadoes documented in the area. Delivery and sales data revealed at least 16 homes in the Rockport and Sinton areas that had been constructed within the last 5 years, and 1 week after landfall, Oak Creek sent a team of investigators to assess their performance. We attempted to reach all customers and successfully located 13 of them. These are their stories. Ironically, our first story is for a customer whose name is Robert Story, a developer who bought the home as an investment property. Mr. Story exhaustively researched all of Oak Creek's competition before buying the house.
Tell me your story. What caused you to find Oak Creek and then to go from there?
Well, basically, I became fascinated and interested in the modular prefab concept. And so we soon found out that there was very few companies that would build on the coast and that would also be willing to deal with TDI, Texas Department of Insurance, and their restrictions and inspections. And so it basically left one company left, which was Oak Creek, and that's how we ended up calling Oak Creek. It fared fairly well during the storm. I believe there's about 6 to 7 feet of water on that particular street in Port Aransas on Dolphin Circle. And because we were about 9 feet in the air, we still had plenty of margin, room for error. There was some water that did get inside the house. The roof cap had busted off the top of the roof, the ridge, which is a weak link, really, in most homes, modular or site built.
Last question, and I'll let you get back to your day. Overall, how satisfied are you with how the house weathered the storm, and would you buy another Oak Creek home?
The house, I was satisfied with the way the house weathered the storm. There was no other damage to the home except the roof, and we would buy another Oak Creek home.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us here.
Okay, you bet.
Customer Ronald Head owns a combination RV manufactured home park in the Rockport area. He has 2 Oak Creek homes that sustained a head-on blow from the fury of Hurricane Harvey. Mr. Head was generous enough to speak to Oak Creek about his experience. Using satellite imagery from Google Earth, the stark difference between the area before and after the storm emerges. Only 2 units from Mr. Head's park emerged without major damage. Both were Oak Creek homes.
So if you wouldn't mind, what's your name, sir?
Ronald Head.
Ronald Head, okay. And you bought your Oak Creek home. How long ago did you buy it?
I think 5 years.
5 years. Okay. Yeah, so just tell me your story. Like, what happened whenever you knew the storm was coming? Like, what was your plan?
My plan was to get out, and so my wife and I, and my daughter and grandson, their dog went to Junction. Okay. We rented a cabin and stayed there for about 4 days, and then we came back and found our home was good. Our home was good. There wasn't too much damage. There was some turnover, some shingles missing.
Yeah.
We run a small RV park, and we had a lot of damage. The trailers probably broke off.
Yeah. When you came back for the first time and took a look at it afterwards, what did you expect, or?
I've been through typhoons, I've been through tornadoes and all that, and I didn't expect what it was. It's the worst I've ever seen anything.
Yeah.
Downtown is pretty much gone.
What were your expectations when you came back and looked at it?
My house will be gone.
Yeah.
But it was just like we decided we wanted to go shopping and come back. And like I said, nothing done inside, everything was just great.
Yeah. And not too far away from here, you had houses that were...
Oh, we had houses. All of our trailers are tore up, turned upside down, and smashed, and it's all houses all over. So, and we got all of our big trees got rolled up by the roots. The smaller ones pretty much stayed, but I figured we had 132 trees. I think we probably lost 50 of them.
Yeah.
But other than that, I just think it's great. I expected that to be completely gone.
Yeah. If in the, would you buy another Oak Creek home?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would, definitely. It's holding up. There's really no problem. We worked with Brenda from Corpus Christi and did a fine job.
Another satisfied Oak Creek customer is the Rodriguez family of nearby Sinton, Texas. Located just a few miles inland from Rockport, Sinton received Category 4 winds and was one of the coast's most damaged areas. Just to the west of town, on a picturesque piece of land, is the Oak Creek single-section model the Rodriguez family calls home. Once again, Hurricane Harvey gave its worst, and Oak Creek responded with strength, protection, and stability.
We were very satisfied with how the house weathered the storm. Almost no damage done.
Aerial footage shows that the roof of this Oak Creek home, like so many others, barely registers any damage from the catastrophe. Only skirting shows any signs of wind damage. Walls, windows, doors, and the overall structure all withstood the storm intact. Of all the Oak Creek homes in Harvey's path, none had been placed there more recently than the one for the Rowe family. It hadn't even been completely installed when workers were ordered to evacuate the area the night before Harvey's landfall, leaving the Rowe's beautiful new house exposed and vulnerable. Before and after footage once again shows that nearby RV parks and lesser-built houses were simply wiped out by the 130-mile-an-hour winds. Less than a mile from the beach, this neighborhood took the worst of Harvey's strength, and the neighborhood withstood it to varying degrees of success. No footage from after the storm demonstrates the strength of Oak Creek's construction or the importance of its installation standards like that from the Rose home. Compare the blue Oak Creek home to the left to the competitor's home that's been blown into its yard. Which one looks like it was built stronger? Every home builder wants its houses to be installed a particular way, but only Oak Creek pays to have a third-party engineering firm ensure the installation's strict performance. This ensures that your home will never wind up in someone else's yard. Gary Newsom had purchased his second Oak Creek home. Located on some acreage outside of the main town, Gary's area saw much of the residential structures damaged or simply destroyed by the storm's wrath. Google Earth once again shows us how this quiet and peaceful area was turned upside down and inside out by Harvey's Category 4 force winds. Mr. Newsom was kind enough to share his story with us.
First off, if you will, what's your name?
Gary Newsom.
Gary Newsom. And the house that you bought, when did you buy the house?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Do you remember the model number or the name?
I do not.
Okay, that's fine.
I do not remember.
All right, so just in your own words, just tell me your story.
Well, Friday morning we left. We saw Harvey had gained strength Thursday night and decided to wait till Friday morning to really make the decision whether to leave or not. And we saw it change to a Cat 4 and decided we'd leave. So we went to Concan, Texas, up in the hills. Sat and watched it all on TV, and the whole time just thinking, what are we going to get back to? This is a modular home. It's sitting 3 foot in the air, granted, but we had stories that, there was a 9-foot tidal surge coming. So After the storm, my boss came out here and he saw evidence of 4 feet of water, and because everything was boarded up, he couldn't really see in the house because it was so dark. So we expected the worst, really. We came home the following Monday and had probably a foot of water still in the yard and debris everywhere. Opened the door with a flashlight and started walking, and very little water. All our stuff was safe. All our possessions were here safe, and just very happy with it.
Okay. Did you expect to come back and see much worse than what you saw?
I really did. We've lived in manufactured housing now for about 20 years. And both the houses I bought, and it went through Ike unscathed. Not even a shingle lost on it. So I would definitely recommend either one of your companies for a home purchase.
Okay. Would you buy another one?
Absolutely. I would buy another Oak Creek home.
Okay. If you had one word of advice to somebody who is in the market for a manufactured home, what advice would you give them?
I would say go to Oak Creek and just look at the quality of it. Yeah, it has a lot of beauty to it, but look deeper. The house is built right mechanically. It's structurally sound, and it's a beautiful home as well. They put a lot of beauty into it, but they've also got the structure to back the beauty.
The Cooper family's once wooded land turned from summer to winter, if it was to be judged by the leaves on the trees after Harvey. Trees and houses in the neighboring community were uprooted or knocked down after taking Mother Nature's beating. Once again, though, an Oak Creek persevered where others didn't. Mr. Cooper was generous enough to share what he went through with an Oak Creek representative.
Tell us your story. What happened when you knew the storm was coming? What was the plan? What happened?
Well, it originally started out it was supposed to be just a Category 1, but y'all stay here. Then, as time progressed, Thursday morning it was a Category 3, prediction to be a Category 4. Thursday evening I got out here but was it hit Friday night. And then I came back Monday morning. Stopped at Lowe's in San Antonio and bought 2 generators. Went on back, set the generators up. That was one for me and one sold one to son-in-law. He set those up and bought the little window unit so we had power. And that's the reason I thought that's got to stay here and protect the house. And there wasn't a whole lot of damage to the house. I lost a whole bunch of oak trees. The firewood. Yeah. No, the house was fine. It stayed up well. There's not a cracked window in it.
Yeah. What did you expect? So you knew you left for the weekend, obviously. You probably heard all the horror stories. You're probably watching this TV. What did you expect when you came back and came driving up?
Well, my daughter came back Sunday. And she called and said the house was okay. Then there wasn't no real big hurry except to get down to it. But she had, in fact, she lived about 2 blocks. And she came in Sunday and they came up and checked. So I'm a carport in there. But the house was sound. They looked around and said everything was fine.
Would you, obviously you were one of the ones that didn't have you in your home, so the question. Would you buy another Oak Creek home?
Yeah, way definitely stood up, yeah.
If you had any advice for someone that was in the market for a manufactured home, what piece of advice would you give them when they're looking for the different types of brands?
Well, I looked at Oak Creek and I looked at what Palm Harbor. And basically what I liked was the high ceilings on the side and the sheetrock. And that plus being recommended to put it on the concrete slab, which saves your time.
And how long ago did you buy the house?
This was in April of last year.
It was delivered around May or so?
I don't remember exactly. I know I moved in the middle of June.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
I'm well pleased with the home. I mean, no doubt about that.
Two sisters also owned Oak Creek homes in the Fulton Rockport area. Being a close family, they placed their homes on adjacent pieces of property and endured the storm together. Satellite footage shows a similar story to the others. What was once peaceful and beautiful had taken a severe beating from the forces of nature. Just the same, their Oak Creek homes endured. Each home sustained some roof damage, which was soon addressed with a blue tarp seen in the drone footage. Most importantly, the houses did not shift on their placement and survived the storm in excellent shape. Both Mrs. Wynn and Mrs. Trim were very pleased with the performance of their Oak Creek homes. The Janowski family was also an Oak Creek success story, with a house that withstood damaging winds and heavy rainfall. This, despite being in a neighborhood that, like so many others, was damaged in such a way that it may take years to recover. Though the Janowskis didn't want to be interviewed, they did offer this one quote.
The house had no damage at all other than a broken window that was caused by flying debris, so the house held up great.
Customer Hrdlicka is another Oak Creek success story. Their home, placed in what was once one of Rockport's most heavily wooded areas, withstood the storm with few visible scars. A brief look at the satellite imagery before and after the storm shows that most of the trees in the neighborhood didn't fare nearly as well. In fact, the only visual evidence of damage to the outside of the home is to the Hrdlicka porch, which was completely destroyed. Remember, never attach a porch directly to your home. Instead, make sure that it is completely self-supporting. We would love to say that every Oak Creek home came out of the storm without major damage, but this just isn't the case. Mrs. Rare and her family lost their home due to water damage from the storm's surge. The home has been rendered uninhabitable. However, like many scientists, we know you can learn just as much from a failure as you can from a success. If the home had been elevated on pilings, it most likely would have survived. The real story to be learned from Mrs. Rare's experience is best told by her daughter's Facebook post, read now as it appeared a few days after the storm.
We recently battled Hurricane Harvey. I'd like to say we met him eye to eye. Neither of us backed down for what seemed like forever. Harvey threw winds at us up to 160 miles per hour. We stayed huddled in the master bedroom closet. It was like a roller coaster ride, beyond scary. Water rushed the house as it began filling quickly. We cut a hole in the roof to use as an escape if necessary. Fortunately, eventually the water started to recede. So I'm writing to say thank you for saving our lives. The house held. Not a single window broke. The roof and the walls remained intact. The tie-downs never snapped, although the house did shift. The home is a total loss due to flooding. But the most important thing is we are alive. We cannot express enough our gratitude. We are currently living in tents on our property while we clear out the rubble. Oak Creek is the only home we will put back on our property.
Mrs. Rare and her daughter agreed to tell their story to Oak Creek.
We had all our food, we had all our stuff, we had, supplies, everything we said on the hurricane this time. And when it started, we actually tried to get out because it started to creak when it said, write your social security number on the phone. That was scary. We had my 4-year-old grandson and my daughter. And that was bad. And we did try to leave and turn us away. So we came back to our original plan and got in the closet, tied ourselves to each other, and just sat in there and prayed and hoped that 140 miles didn't come. I think it did. I think it was farther than that. And the eye came right over it, got quiet. And then the next thing was the other side of the storm with the water coming in. And no barrel from here, so we were right over it. And it was pushing. You could feel it under the floor, like raging under there. It was crazy. And when it started to come in, we got really scared. You could see on the windows kind of bowed a little bit, but they didn't break. I didn't have any boards on there. I didn't have time to board it up, but I put it in the panels. I was hoping. I just hoping. But we poked a hole through the roof, actually, because when the water started coming in, we didn't know how high it was going to be. And see, that's the only thing I seem to learn from Katrina, I guess. We didn't have a hammer. That's the only thing we didn't have. So it was hard to get to that roof.
Yeah.
It was hard. But we got through the roof, and actually at the end, when the sun came up, we were able to get out and get up on the roof. There was some helicopters flying around. And they didn't come get us, but there was some helicopters flying around. And finally, when by the evening, the water had subsided some enough that we saw traffic on the road back here. And so we decided to put Max on my paddleboard and put some of our stuff on it, and we were going out with him on the paddleboard, going out down the other side of San Antonio. And then that's when the state troopers came, and they gave us a ride from there. But it was like, I've been crying off and on. It'd just be one little thing, and I'm just like, phew. But everybody's alive. The things were pounding and hitting on the house. You could hear stuff hitting on the house. No windows broke. The screen door blew. That's the only thing. And some shingles on it.
Right.
And other than that, the water surge, did push it a little bit off the foundation, but
You're obviously hoping that that would be the case. Did you have any expectations of the damage and so forth? Did you think that there was going to be more damage than what there was?
Yeah, it sounded like it sounded. I wasn't sure what we were going to come out here to.
The windows, the water was up to the windows, so it was literally, you could see it pushing in the windows, and we thought they would bust, but they never did. And so when we came out, we were expecting to see like half a house, not a house, panels, just a little area at the kitchen and closet where we were. But you look around, and it was like one of the last fence. Built like a beach.
Yeah.
I would have another here on the coast.
Is there anything? I guess the last question I'll ask them. Hey, should I buy an Oak Creek home or should I look around somewhere else? Is there anything else you can say to them?
Definitely buy an Oak Creek home. They're built solid, tough. They're guaranteed to a certain wind. This thing held up. I mean, if it wasn't for the water surge, I would have no damage on here. Maybe for shingles, and that's it. And when you look around this, when you look around and see the devastation of what it could be, there's I would buy Oak Creek again. I would recommend anybody that's going to rebuild or stay in the area to go check them out because they've done a good safety.
In our travels through the hurricane-stricken area, we were also able to observe the performance of many homes built by our competition. As a rule, very few fared well. In this example, you can see a multi-section home that moved from its original location to several hundred feet away. A cursory view of the home's exterior shows that it wasn't only the installation that was poorly executed. Another home built by our competition suffered the same fate. Not only is it much worse for wear after the hurricane, but it also has moved from its original placement, driving home the importance of Oak Creek's 47-point installation inspection. A replay of this example shows that this home was much more mobile than intended, moving over 1/8 of a mile from its place of origin. Also, the damage to its exterior can be seen clearly from a satellite in space, not a sign of good construction.
Hello everyone out there, this is Carl Nunn with Oak Creek Homes out of Fort Worth, Texas. Due to all the recent hurricane activity, especially with Harvey down in Houston, a lot of people have questions and concerns and also want to know what makes a house quote-unquote hurricane worthy or where the house will hold up for the for the hurricane conditions. We've recently had a lot of folks that have experienced the hurricanes, and luckily a lot of the Oak Creek homes have come through in pretty good condition considering all the conditions they've been through. But it really starts with a lot of things that we do. Here we have the frame that we're showing you here. You have a very sturdy frame with a 12-inch I-beam and an outrigger. The outriggers actually hold up the outside walls, or it helps support that during the delivery of the home. So a good proper foundation is the key point to get started on a house. And so it's real important that you guys realize that we build our own frames and we can actually customize these frames for the homes that we build, meaning extra support in certain areas. And also if it's a wind zone 1, wind zone 2, even wind zone 3, in our modular product, you're also going to build the wind speeds 100, 120, and 140. So it's real important that the house actually be built to the area where the house is going to be set in its eventual foundation in place. Previously, we showed you the frames in the frame build department. Here's our flooring department. I want you to notice here that there's also a frame hanging upside down that's been completed. We're working on the floor decking at this point, and you can see on the individual studs, the glues, the fasteners, and everything that we use to put the house together. Those fasteners are not basically used in a site-built home, and because of our processes and procedures and being in an environment where we can use all these additional fasteners, adhesives, and glues, our houses are very well constructed and hold up better in hurricane conditions. One of the key components also for keeping a house, basically, I'm going to say hurricane, let's say wind rated, is the strapping material. When you have a wind zone 1, wind zone 2, or wind zone 3 house, the strapping schedule changes. This is unitized construction. You have the floor also attached to the wall, and the nailing pattern is also very important. So as you walk around the house, you're also going to notice we have some other strapping. Here you have what's actually called a hurricane strap or wind zone 2 strap. This will actually be strapped to the ground with a ground anchor into the ground itself. Then you also notice that the stud here is fastened to the floor, meaning it's unitized together. The floor and the walls are all one piece. Then on the actual ceiling itself, we're going to do this again. We'll have metal strapping attaching the wall to the ceiling in the ceiling department. And we'll show you that as we go on. But you'll see here the wind strap here. As you walk further down, you see additional strapping here in the studs, here and here. And as you get into a higher wind load house, you'll have more and more. On 150 and 140 mile an hour mods, you'll actually have these metal strapping every single stud. And so your wind rating becomes higher and higher and higher based on how you unitize the construction of the house itself, meaning that the floor, the walls, and the ceiling are all unitized together. Uplift on the ceiling is one of your biggest issues when you have a hurricane condition or a high wind condition. And so unitized construction puts the house together as one piece and it holds together much better. Here we're in our ceiling department. We're actually attaching the ceiling of the home to the walls themselves. So here you see a ceiling hanging here. This ceiling will be dropped onto the wall structure that's already into the home. After these are fastened together, then once again, you'll see the metal strapping that's attaching the wall to the ceiling. And if you'll pan down, you'll see him attaching that in there. Those metal straps are very important. They actually unitize the ceiling to the wall, and once again, the wall is already unitized to the flooring system. This makes it one solid piece called unitized construction. As we get closer to the end of the construction phase, we've now attached the ceiling to the walls, and now we're putting the roof decking, the roofing paper, and now the shingles. The shingles are very important. We have a standard 3-tab shingle that's attached in a wind zone 1 pattern, but as you go to the higher wind speed ratings, wind zone 2, wind zone 3, also your 120, 140, and 150 modular, you're going to have a different nail pattern or a higher nail pattern. The pattern of the nails will be closer together, and in some of the higher wind loads, you'll also have a higher rated shingle, what we call a Miami-Dade shingle. But that's if we go into the higher wind load ratings. So it's real important that the shingles that actually protect the roof from any moisture we're getting into the home are attached correctly. So the higher wind pattern helps them not float away or be drawn away in a hurricane. We showed you the shingles being applied on the home. We talked about the higher nail patterns, the wind loads. Here we also have the interior of the structure itself. You're going to notice a ridge beam here. The ridge beam is where the two halves come together and attach, and it's also what I call the backbone of the house. The more ridge beam we have, the better off we are. This is where all your roof trusses are attached also as well, and it kind of unitizes the construction of the whole piece together. Also noting the netting for the insulation, so when the house is being delivered, the insulation stays in place and is not displaced or lost. Also, in a high wind condition, it does keep everything inside, which is what you want. You don't want things, debris and stuff floating on the outside of the home. So it keeps everything tight on the inside, keeps it from compacting, and so you have a nice, neat, clean interior of the home, and you don't have those that debris floating around. This home is more in its finished condition. This is our final finish here before we painted the exterior of the house. But one thing I did want to point out to you, these are Wind Zone 2 straps. This is what we talked about, the hurricane straps that we looked at, and they were actually mounted to the floor and to the floor joist. Now you see here it comes down, a metal strap will go through this slot, it's bolted in place, and then an anchor will go into the ground to hold that down. And you'll see this about every 6 to 8 feet on the house, depending on the wind speed rating. And so you'll see them all down the house. So if you're in a high wind area and your home is assembled to a foundation, make sure they take into account to put in the anchors to anchor the house down to the actual ground itself. And that'll help unitize the construction. Now you've got the ground, the floor, the walls, and the ceiling all unitized together to try to help defray the impact of your high speed, your high wind conditions, and hurricane winds. So in summary, when we're talking about high wind conditions or hurricane conditions, if you're really concerned about things and for the safety of you, your family, and the home itself, it starts with the home. You have to have the proper foundation as far as your metal framing, your walls are attached, your unitized construction that we talked about, the proper wind rating, the proper nail patterns for your shingles. All things are important. But also you have to understand that it's the total package. It's what type of foundation do you have under your house? Do you have a concrete foundation? Do you have your anchors properly attached to the ground? Those things are very important, and you've got to make sure that you have that. Now also, any attached structure or anything you have outside the home can also affect things in high wind conditions. If you haven't properly affixed either a garage, a carport, anything to the home itself, you've got to make sure that you follow the proper procedures, because the houses are engineered for the house itself. Anything attached to it, you really need to make sure that you're following building codes, or even have a local engineer look at it and make sure that you're attaching things correctly to the home itself and that it meets all the needs, especially in the high wind zone areas or places of risk for hurricane. So any debris outside, even lawn furniture, grills, smokers, anything like that outside that's not attached or not taken into an area where it's protected from the wind can become a projectile and actually go into your home. So be real cautious about that. Anytime you're experiencing either a high wind condition or even hurricane conditions, that you're protecting yourself and your family, that you're in a home that's been properly installed, not only for the foundation, but also the house has been built according to the correct wind speeds and wind loads, and that you secure anything loose on the exterior of your home. And always, if they're in your area and they tell you to go to a shelter to evacuate, please follow your local law enforcement individuals. That's probably your best bet. But we want to do everything we can to make sure that we've built the home properly and that your family has a home to come back to. We appreciate you. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us at Oak Creek Homes in Fort Worth. We thank you.